Welcome back to Comic Book ASMR. Today we're going to be doing a flip through of this beautiful book, Fantastic Four, the first 60 years. This was actually donated to me for the channel by Ben, who his channel he goes by, or his YouTube handle, is The Lost Chromosome. And so, yeah, he just PayPal'd me funds and shot a message that said, hey, this is the book I'd like for you to buy and do a video on your channel. He's a loyal listener, viewer. So if you guys want to do the same thing, basically in my description, there is a PayPal link, and you just click that, and then you send funds, and then you send a note with it that says, hey, I want you to read this thing or do a video on this thing, and I will be more than happy to fulfill requests that way. So thanks so much, Ben. We're going to get right into it. So they have done a few of these books, and I've done a few on the channel too. I believe I've done Spider-Man as well as Captain America. I don't know how many they have, but they're great. So as you can see, based on the table of contents, they go through decade by decade of the series up until what's pretty current. We don't see the 2020s there, but they still do talk about them a little bit. So we have a little opening letter here talking about the importance of the Fantastic Four. And yeah, they've really got everything started. So we start with the 60s here. And so the background here is, I think if I remember reading, basically like as soon as like another country was officially in space, the Russians, I believe, Fantastic Four #1 released like simultaneously. In one of the premises of the Fantastic Four was the space race. So the Fantastic Four, as opposed to checking all the safety precautions, they're trying to be the first ones to get into space. And so, based upon ignoring precautions, they flew into that cosmic storm that caused them to get their powers. So yeah, we see Stan Lee is talking about Dr. Wertim. So basically, Dr. Wertim was a guy who wrote a book called Seduction of the Innocent, which was about the dangers of comic books, and it really demonized the industry at that time. So, a lot of quote-unquote good concerned parents, they were, destroying their kids' books and things like that. And, there were some of them that were pretty gory and violent, but basically this guy would do a lot of reaching for what he considered as inappropriate. And so basically the companies came up with the Comics Code Authority as a way to self-censor, to say, hey, we have certain standards and checklists that we go by to make sure our books are, wholesome. And those were on books for a good long time. So it's funny, it's one of those things that I think about fondly, nostalgically, as, oh yeah, all the books I grew up with reading as a kid. They all had that seal on them for that comics code, but it was really like kind of an annoying propensitary thing to kind of keep themselves in check due to that doctor in his book, which was trying to destroy the comic industry. So has a lot of negatives behind it. So yeah, we get a blurb here basically talking about how Lee and Kirby were like John Lennon and Paul McCartney for the Beatles. They were the best creative team in comic books. They came up with hit after hit. And we see this nice picture of Jack here working, of course, because the man worked a ton. He drew so much stuff, so many titles. Like, I still don't know how he did it all, I know a lot of it wasn't like photorealistic, but still to produce the bulk of work that he did and innovate so much like he did was really incredible. So yeah, this is talking about how basically the first issues of the Fantastic Four were really just laying groundwork for all of Marvel stuff in general. We see this appearance by the Skrulls here. Namor came back. See the Fantastic Four annual number 2, I believe, yeah. Which I believe is they did a retelling, of the origin of Doctor Doom. Or I guess it had never been fully revealed at that time, according to the cover. I'm not super well versed on Fantastic Four, but I basically, like, the first, I don't know, maybe 60 or so issues are really considered kind of like some of the Marvel gold standard with as far as innovating is concerned. Had a lot of great characters show up. The biggest, of course, being like, Silver Surfer and Galactus. And Black Panther showed up in there too. He's a pretty big one. And then here we see a spotlight here of when Kirby would do photographic collage, and he would paint over, I think probably just black and white photos, and then they would get painted over, paste them down, and then kind of do a composite with, the other stuff in here as well, with the regular comic line art and then the dialogue boxes. Most of the stuff was glued, I believe, in that day. Everything was glued down. I could be wrong, but I believe that was how it was done. So this is talking about kind of the domino effect of stuff that happened here, how the Fantastic Four met and faced the Inhumans. We see Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman getting married there. And then shortly thereafter, we see the coming of Galactus, which, what cool thing here with Silver Surfer is he was solely something that Jack Kirby just plopped into the story. Stan saw him zipping around on some of the pages, and he's like, "Who's this guy?" He's like, "Oh, well, this is Silver Surfer," and he's the messenger for Galactus and all this type of stuff. And so that was an instance where Kirby innovated even within Stan's script in a way that wasn't even present at all. So a lot of what happened was because Stan was working on so many books, he would give a general plot outline to his artists, and then they would go ahead and they would draw, the 20 pages, and then Stan would come back and do the dialogue. That's what's known as the Marvel method. And things seem pretty more spelled out now in the current industry. But in that period, there was a lot of creative license. And unfortunately, a lot of stuff gets muddied. Details get muddied with, who created what and all this type of stuff. But I know Stan created a lot. I know Kirby created a lot. I will just say they are both very creative people in different ways. So I don't want to disparage anyone. I know Kirby, unfortunately, like finance-wise, he didn't become this huge millionaire and stuff like that. He's starting to get more recognition in the media that uses his stuff, like whenever they're doing the movies and stuff like that. So that's nice to see. But as far as, being a huge millionaire or whatever that Stan was, Kirby never saw that. He would just constantly be drawing pages, so he would get that page rate and be able to provide for his family. And he was a tough guy and an industry legend, king of comics, of course, the greatest innovator as far as illustration is concerned, for sure. We see the splash page here for this man, this monster. I remember multiple times Stan saying that this was one of his favorite issues of the Fantastic Four, just kind of dealing with the character development there of Ben Grimm. And yeah, so that's always a cool one. Whenever I see it, I think about that. We see a little timeline here. Basically, for a while, it goes issue by issue because there were big things happening in every issue of the Fantastic Four. a lot of guest stars too. Fantastic Four was the book to kind of showcase new and interesting things and even pre-existing characters. But yeah, they started it off. So Fantastic Four was the first big start for Marvel. And with that too, basically, like, we go back to, the whole seduction of the innocent book and all that type of stuff. Basically, Stan was at a place in the industry where he really wanted to be like a regular book author, And at the time, I'm not sure if he was married to her, but his soon-to-be wife, if not wife, was just like, well, why don't you just write a comic the way you've always wanted to write it, And so that's why Fantastic Four kind of did as well as it did, because it was all about these flawed heroes and, the dialogue read true to the time period and stuff like that. And so it was very innovative, very creative, and very unique in the fact that even though these guys were heroes, they had these human flaws, which was great. So then we move on to the 70s here. Like I said, I'm more versed in the stuff from the 60s, but that doesn't mean the book still wasn't good, Like, if you have your favorite heroes, you have your favorite heroes. It doesn't matter the time period. We see fun things here, like always a recurring thing was the Hulk versus the Thing. And kind of a little piece they talked about too previously. Basically, there was a magazine article written, I'm forgetting which magazine, but basically it was giving Stan more credit than Jack. And I think they said that was around issue 68 of Fantastic Four, and so that kind of developed a soreness and a rift between Stan and Jack, unfortunately. And then around issue number 98, I believe, DC had gotten a hold of Jack Kirby, and they're like, hey, we would like you to come work for us and all this sort of stuff. And he proceeded to do that, and then he created like the New Gods and all those type of characters for DC, which is still a big, huge foundation for that company. Jack was incredibly creative, But yeah, Fantastic Four, the last issue that had Jack's art in it was Fantastic Four issue 102, and then Romita Sr. took over for, I believe, 4 issues, and then after that, I believe Buscema was kind of the main driving force for a while. At least that's what I remember reading. I could be wrong. And then, of course, Thing would always find himself fighting, all these kind of incredible Marvel characters, basically always doing the strongman battles, And we see here the Crusader. I'm not really familiar with this character, but I've definitely seen him before. You see Roy Thomas here, another great author for the Fantastic Four, for a lot of stuff too. So I like how they have these little blurbs about the guys in here. Here's John Buscema. I always pronounce it Buscema. There's the webcomics podcast. I think it's just, I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's just Webcomics Weekly, I believe, and they always pronounce his name Buscema, so that's why I pronounce it that way now, because I think they know what they're talking about. I could be wrong, but... So we move on to the 80s here. We see some John Byrne artwork, which, I would love to see this too. John Byrne is one of my favorite talents, but I never read his Fantastic Four run, just because a lot of it is just like, there's so many titles, it's just kind of hard to pin everything down. Like, you get too many books, even now, like with selling off, I still have too many books, So, but I'd love to read Byrne's run on him. I know a big part of it was She-Hulk eventually finds her way into the team. And then I think there's a few other like random rotations in this time period too. Yeah, there's She-Hulk. I was never clear on how she showed up, but I know, John Byrne, She-Hulk, was pretty much one of his big, huge successes. So, of course, they found a way to work that into Fantastic Four. And we see our stuff here, and then we see 84 was the Secret War. And then, here's She-Hulk, speaking of. So, She-Hulk was unique in the fact that during the Byrne run, she broke the fourth wall. She was very sarcastic. She kind of tongue-in-cheek was all about, acknowledging all the lonely, horn dog fanboys and, them finding her attractive, and then they would like write her into compromising situations to draw her provocatively and stuff like that. So it was kind of predated all the other stuff like that. Although I don't know if there were other books at the time doing that, but I know that's just kind of a landmarker for me that I can think about. So we see more stuff. We see U.S. Agent here, Thor, so guest starring in the Avengers there, of course. Everyone just kind of overlaps everyone else's stuff for a bit, And let's see who this one is. I see the art duties on this one. Oh, Paul Ryan, okay. Definitely a very 90s style, kind of the more stretched out, more, over-exaggerated muscles and things like that. And we have the death of the Fantastic Four and the rebirth. This is when they're trying to really do a bolster of sales here. We had Jim Lee drawing him for his spell. We had Liefeld doing Captain America, all this sort of stuff. They were really trying to re-inject some juice into Marvel, and at that time it was really difficult for them. And a lot of stuff in that period got retconned. Doom 2099. This is a cool image here. I like the negative space and the stars and stuff behind here. So this is the 2000s. So I know the 2000s, they were really trying to do some more innovative as far as visually trying to do different styles. You can see this is kind of, although the building choices reads very Kirby-esque, kind of like the coloring and stuff like that looks pretty unique. The Inhumans kind of came back into the main surface here. We see Galactus's skull here. See Doom holding a baby. It's Mr. Fantastic's daughter there. Of course, we're mentioning the Civil War here. Big thing. Really kind of like restarted the event books that kind of affected the whole status quo of all of the titles, which worked for a while. Like I said, I was a fan of it up until they got to the original Sin event. At that point, I was burnt out. But for a period, it was fun to kind of see, a big event that kind of overlapped and touched on all the titles. So, oh yeah, we got Brian Hitch art here. That's what I thought. This is the stuff written by Mark Millar. Mike Waringo. Deceased for quite a few years now. I think it's probably been 5 or so years, maybe even longer. Time does fly. But he was a fun one. I remember seeing this cover on the stands and really being impressed by it. Just kind of with the exaggerated proportions mixed with like the bright coloring techniques used. And then we see more death and rebirth of the Fantastic Four here. I believe this was the period where even Spider-Man was in there, and he had like the white suit that they did. I'm trying to remember what they called the Future Foundation. This one right here. So yeah, and then we had the death of the Human Torch there, Johnny Storm. And this was the period whenever Steve Epting was doing the art, and I haven't read that either. And you guys know I love Epting, so I really need to get on that. They've had quite a few talents work on the series with good reason. You know, we see a blurb about Jonathan Hickman, another prolific writer, a big one to really get readers. So yeah, we see a little bit of the Future Foundation suits there where they're in the all white with Spidey there, taking over for the Human Torch's spot. And Spidey's always had a history with those guys too, you know. Spider-Man #1 was a guest spot with the Fantastic Four, so. And then this is talking about kind of the newer bits, which it's crazy. It's crazy that now even this decade is considered old because, you know, I was buying and showing these off on the channel here. The Dan Slott run. Which is right there. Drawn, this is a homage drawn by Todd Knock there of Young Justice fame, as you guys know. See some all red Silver Surfer. But yeah, that's gonna do it. So here's some of the other ones they have, but I think they've got even more than this too. But I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down below, what's your favorite Fantastic Four memory or story, villain, anything. I love to read your comments. Of course too, if you've got a book you want me to read, drop me a donation with a note and my PayPal link, and I'll be more than happy to do that for you on the channel. I guess that's it. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, you all have a super slumber. Thanks. Bye.